like to start by saying thanks everybody for taking some time out of your holiday to join another installment of Engage with Team Daniels-Haltom with the Core 30 group. My name is Aaron Katz. I'll be the host for this evening's town hall. I'd like to start by letting everybody know that there's recording going on. It's being recorded, so maybe some of you have already seen the highlight videos that we put out afterwards, along with the video in its entirety for anyone who couldn't join. So. It's no secret that this is probably the most important election that any of us will vote in to this date in NACA's history. And it is imperative that you are as educated as possible about the names that are on the ballots when they show up at your house, which should be getting mailed out on June 3rd. With that, we would like to start by giving Nick and Jamal not only a chance to introduce themselves as candidates, but to give you a little background on who they are as people. Nick and Jamal, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Aaron, and thanks to the entire team that always helps put all these together. And for those who are joining on a holiday, we rolled the dice. We wanted to see how it would turn out. We understand there are many people out probably on lakes barbecuing with their families. But thank you to those who want to also take the time to ensure that they learn, they have the time and attention to give to our union, because that is ultimately what this is about, having the real conversations and finding out ways to move forward together. So with that said, I'm Nick Daniels. I'm the NACA Southwest Regional Vice President. I started my career in air traffic in the United States Marine Corps from 1998 to 2003. I actually thought I would never get out of the Marine Corps and that I would retire from there and then see what life had to hold for me after that. However, I was injured before going over to Iraq in 2002 and ended up separating from the Marine Corps, and ultimately applied for the FAA and was hired in March of 2003 to Addison Tower in Dallas, Texas. It was quite fortunate. It was from the area. Didn't want to be back at home. However, again, life has its way. And then in 2005, I was selected to go over to Fort Worth Center. I went there and it certified just before the White Book took effect in 2006. And right after that, in around 2007, I was asked to be an area representative. I'd gone to my first NAC in Washington. I had seen the White Book go into effect and knew that I had one of my best friends at that time, his pay cut by 30%. We were going through training together. This was his first facility at Fort Worth Center, and that we needed to stand up and exercise our rights, our collective voice, and what did that really mean? And all the senior controllers said, "This is your career. We're not here to fight this fight. We'll back you up in it." So they gave me kind of the blessing and the motivation to run. Spent 6 years as an area representative at Fort Worth Center. Then I was the secretary, vice president, 6 years as a facility representative, 3 years as ARVP, and now serve as the regional vice president for the Southwest region and as a candidate for NACA president. I also have an 18-year-old son who just graduated high school on Friday. His actual ceremony is tomorrow. I look forward to going and watching him walk across the stage and take his next step towards his adult career and where that may take him. Right now, sounds like he's going to go out and work on being a pilot. He already has his private pilot's license, working on his instrument rating. So excited to see him begin in that career, and also having the chance to impact aviation while he's also impacting aviation. And then aside to that is also I have a 6-year-old daughter, and she just got done with kindergarten on her way to first grade. And she is definitely the one who keeps me focused, drive and determination. I see it all in her, and it's a beautiful thing to watch, while at the same time, very scary to see some of her stubbornness at the same time as well. But with that being said, that's a little bit about me. I'll turn it over to you, brother.
How you doing? Pardon. Jamal-Haltom, currently NACA's National Training Representative, assigned to Las Vegas Tower. I too began my career in the military, U.S. Air Force in '99, stayed into '05. Got out, worked a couple contract towers, one in Connecticut, one in Maryland, Groton and Martin State. Then got hired in the FAA in 2007, right at the beginning of the White Book, and saw the solidarity of those that were, holding the line and not accepting a B scale so that I could eventually get back the pay. And that was what inspired me to be part of the union immediately. I was at Las Vegas TradeCon, then transitioned over to Tamiami Tower in Miami, Florida. Loved it there, but also had a desire to get back to the desert. Went to Las Vegas Tower in 2010, and there became the secretary for a few months. The VP and president said, "Man, you're pretty good at this. Why don't you be our de facto president and then run for actual FAC rep when the time comes?" So did that, and in 2011 became the FAC rep. I had 4 consecutive terms as the FAC rep of Las Vegas. During that time, was on the contract slate book negotiating team in 2016. Stood up recurrent training back in 2012. Participated in that, and various other positions and titles, but really just NACA member is the most important title that I've had during that entire time. Was on the Slatebook contract negotiating team, as I said, and then became the national training rep, where I've served in that position since 2019, and here I am now, a candidate for executive vice president. My personal life, I do have a 21-year-old daughter. She just turned 21 back on May 22nd. I wouldn't say she runs my life, but she does make sure that I don't have any money. So between that and just being a 21-year-old, we kind of raised each other, and that's where we are. So very happy to be here with you guys and have some time to converse, answer your questions, and engage with you all. So thank you for joining.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Okay, so we like to devote the majority of time to the town halls to interaction, question and answer. But also, if you have ideas that you'd like to share, we capture those. You know, if we hear things on these, it's like, hey, that's a great original thought on how we could move the union forward. Please don't hesitate to share those. I'll go over the housekeeping rules for the Q&A in just a moment. But before we like to transition to that part, we want to give Nick and Jamal a chance to just speak on any wide variety of issues that exist out there. Obviously, there's no shortage of them these days. So we like to start with that process first. So I'll turn it back over to Nick and Jamal to speak on all things NACA. Go ahead, guys.
I'll keep it short because I really want to hear what this group has to say, and the questions are being brought forward. The main one that we'd like to talk about, and that we'd like to see what questions you have about it is, Rich and Mick have definitely decided to pin their campaign on painting Jamal and I as two who will never want to negotiate a contract again, which is 100% false. We have talked about it, time and time again. And we've been out educating the members about the realities ahead, something our president should be doing, something that we should have a cohesive message in, yet it's being used as a pawn to get elected of, oh, I'll be the one that gets you pay, not anyone else. Any union worth their salt is going to find the ways to make pay actually increase, move forward, and our collective rights and our compensation be addressed. That is fundamentally who we are and what we're about. But when you decide to try to paint somebody else as them never wanting to do it, some people are going to, take that as a message from the union, and somehow that we're willing to settle. That is absolutely not the case. And we have many, provisions, ideas, ways that we plan to address it. But we're not going to sit there and watch the agency hold a gun to our head as well, in the meantime, to collectively strip our rights away. These are things that we know we can fight. We have to be strategic about them, and we would look forward to talking to those with you about them. Outside of that, one of the things that usually isn't addressed that I'd like to, just break open is, why is Jamal and I running as a team? Rich and Mick clearly running as a team, but decide to, pawn it off as they're not. Jamal and I wanted to be honest with you. We know our strengths, our weaknesses. They complement one another. We push each other. There is something to leadership, and it is not a one-person ideal. It's a team sport. Having leaders that can have the trust in one another, can be honest, can push each other, and have a synergy makes us better collectively. And that's not just saying Jamal and I are just nod our head every time that one of us talks. It's about being able to push back and know that those conversations are real, direct, upfront, and they're always with the intent to make us better, maybe personally, or maybe the way that we collectively think through items. So I'm sure there'll be questions in the near future. about what happens if one person electing that, or what one doesn't, please ask them. They'll tell you that we know our best chance for success is with Team Daniels and Haltom, both of us being elected for these positions because our ideas don't just sit because Nick and Jamal have all the good ideas. It's because of our style of engagement with the members overall. So, brother, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, for me is uh, the beauty of going out, and I think we just crossed over to 160 facilities yesterday. The beauty of going and visiting facilities is you get to get the tone and tenor and feel the climate of where we are as a union, and where we are as a union really solidifies the purpose and why I thought it was important to put my hand up and say that I like to be considered for this position. And it's at a position where the trust is not where I'm accustomed to seeing it. Being a union member since 2005 and an FAA NACA member since 2007, I've always known that for the most part, people had trust and faith that the union was always steering in a positive direction and meant them well. I think that we've fallen woefully short of how we should be communicating with our members, particularly those that are just coming into the agency. And then we have some of our more seasoned members that have along the way not been told that they're part of the process and what our overall purpose is. So we've turned into a union that says, a membership that says, give me things or be damned, because we're not providing them with any messaging of who we are as a collective cohesively. And I think that needs to change. I think our members need to be able to trust us and have our best and understand that as a national union, we have their best interests at heart. And the way to do that is have people of integrity in leadership positions that display that and then demand that from those around them, and not demand it just through words, but through their actions. When you have leaders that tell different stories to whichever group they're in an attempt to appease, it ends up creating division. It sows distrust, and we have to overcome that so we can be strong. We have many fights ahead of us, regardless of who wins the national president for the United States. We're going to have obstacles in our way to our success across all of our bargaining units. And the only way we'll be prosperous is if our members believe in us and they join in the fight. So that's why Nick and I are running together. And that's specifically why I'm putting my name in the hat for consideration. So hope that you all do consider it. And honestly, please ask us any questions that you have. Be part of spreading the message. Be that you liked what we said or you didn't. Be part of the process and spread that information as far as you can. Thank you.
That's well said, guys. Thanks for the time there. Okay, so let me go over just a couple housekeeping items for the engagement part, the asking questions. There's two ways you can ask questions. Use the raise your hand function rather. If you scroll over the bottom of the strip, it'll be like dead center, say raise hand. You can put that up. If you're in a place where you're able to, you feel comfortable enough, if you raise your hand, don't hesitate to turn your camera on. It really increases the engagement a little bit, makes it easier. I'll come over, I'll click on ask to unmute. You'll see a thing come up. If you are finished asking your question and you may have more to say, just stay off of mute, because once you mute yourself, I won't know that you have more to say unless you put your hand back up. So it's just kind of a limitation of the technology. You can also ask a question in the chat. Please post it to everyone. So if the chat fills up, it doesn't get lost by only being delivered to myself, a single person trying to manage this. If you wouldn't mind, if you post in the chat, please also include what facility you're from. As Nick and Jamal said, the campaign's been going on for a while. There's no shortage of rumor and innuendo, this take, this issue, that issue. Please, by all means, this is what we want from you. This is not scripted. We're not hammering softballs out of the park here. Like, we want raw, organic questions. We're putting ourselves out there so that you have that opportunity to hear it straight from Nick and Jamal, whatever it is you may want to know about. So that's pretty much the ground rules. I know it's always a little awkward getting someone to ask the first question, but please, this is your time. Feel free. You've given us part of your holiday. Let's make the most of it and see if we can get some questions. Don't pull any punches. But I think, at the end of the day, we're all still NACA family. We can be respectful about whatever it is we want to ask. But as the boys said, nothing is off limits. All right. Gary from Denver. Gary asked us questions from the Philippines, I think, when he was on vacation before. Gary, welcome, brother. Glad to have you back.
Good to see you guys. Quick question about placement. It's one of the things that has been coming up in my local a lot lately. We were even talking about it today. It seems like one of the big issues we have nationally is where people go out of the academy, and how it would save a lot of time if people just went where they wanted to be. Pay might not be as big of an issue, where if you were at least in your town or close to your town where you grew up or wanted to be, then you might be able to deal with a little less pay. We should always be pushing for pay, but yeah, that's basically it. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Gary. Well, there's a lot of things we can do and a lot of things that we are presently doing. Hopefully, really soon, at last conversation, hopefully about June 17th, we'll be implementing some changes to the academy to address exactly what you said. And that is keeping a larger list for people to choose from with some data points to determine who's on that list. But for the most part, most facilities being on that list and giving those both in terminal and en route the opportunity to closely align with where they're from or where they want to be, to at least try to stymie off that level of movement, where those who come in at least want to give some time to their original location and let life dictate maybe a future move, as opposed to already knowing when they get there that they had no interest in being at a particular place. And we have to balance that with the needs of the NAS. But when we have the ability to give the flexibility to bargaining unit employees, and by the way, they're not yet bargaining unit employees until the day they graduate, they become it. And right away, we want to start serving them as union members, and in turn, be able to serve those who are already in place. Because when those people show up at their building, if they're not looking to move, it helps stabilize the facility and allow someone who maybe has been waiting for quite some time to move to a specific location. So we do have to tie all of our employee movement together, starting with our academy. Nick, you want to add anything to that?
I'll just give the other half of the equation is we have to revamp the incept process. As it stands today, continuing with the same approach at incept will not yield results for those who are also already hired in the system and looking to go to other places. We have people that are bidding to Chicago O'Hare when they want to go to Midway because they know that that facility will never rise up on the list high enough. That's not serving Chicago O'Hare. It's not serving the membership. And it's ultimately prolonging the problem of our critically staffed facilities. We must get back to re-looking and reimagining a system where not only are people being placed out of the academy at areas, locations, and facilities that they know, but those members that are currently in level 7 and below facilities, we should be backfilling behind them for if they want to go to a level 9 and below facility. And we cannot continue to live in a world where 85% is the 100%. We must start looking at other means like retention and throughput. How many people do we need to retain at a facility, and how many people should we keep moving through the system simultaneously, so that way they can go and staff, higher level facilities, 10s, 11s, and 12s from there. I think that is one aspect of it, and then also looking at the distribution of persons coming out of the academy. We have our 5s, 6s, and 7s, and I know they're likely not on this call, but let's just make sure we're all educated about it, that are in an up down that usually take around 2 years to certify. Those facilities are getting the same one body as a facility that usually can turn somebody out in 4 to 6 months. Well, by the time that facility that can turn out somebody in 4 to 6 months goes through 4 people, that up down has only gone through 1. We need to look at making sure that we give 3 to 4 bodies to the up down to the tower that's going to train somebody 6 months. So in the same 2-year time frame, they've both turned out 4 bodies. When we have people that are just bidding to tower onlys as previous experience, because they say it's easier to get out of there faster now, we have to start changing the process. And that's something that Rich and Mick have failed to do and continue to go down the same path. They'll say that they're going to address it or they're going to fix it, but it's usually just a round 3, level 8s and 9s that ended up yielding in 5 moves overall. You got to take a different approach. Jamal and I have said for over 2 years that we should be doing one of the rounds just level 8s and 9s only. All of these things will help build and move, not only with placement at the academy, but the movement through the entire system. As Jamal said, they all have to start working in conjunction to include engaging the agency on deviations as well. But it's a whole nother rabbit hole. So I'll leave it there, and we'll see if that comes up another way.
Only really quick piece that I would add to that, Gary, and it's really for everyone on the call, is those changes that are coming to the academy are a testament to collaboration. And when you continuously work with your collaborative counterparts and you distribute or um, when you show them that you have the capability to bring ideas that actually end up helping the overall system, they're more welcoming and want to be part of a process of working with you. And we've done that time and time again as I've been in the training rep position, and that's how we were able to expand those lists. So I think soon we'll see a lot of gains out of that, but it really is a testament to a good collaborative relationship, because ultimately placement is an agency-owned, determined process that we've been able to wedge ourselves into.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the question, Gary. Welcome back from the Philippines. Glad your girlfriend didn't kill you when you're on the town hall over there like you were worried about. Okay, we've got a question in the chat from JFK4. How do you specifically plan to get us at higher level facilities a raise?
I think you have to start off with a short term and a long term plan, right? In the short term, we have to go back and ensure that we keep when in a negotiation for pay, regardless of position and band, meaning that the top of our band never stops moving upward, where it's not a stagnant band like it was in the past prior to the slate book, and that band just existed for the length of the term negotiation. We have to ensure that that is held for our higher level facilities. Then we need to start looking at increasing, obviously, your movement through that band in a more rapid like manner, because while the band may be, however many thousands of dollars wide or tens of thousands of dollars wide, it's ultimately going to be how do you get to the top of that? And if it takes 25 years to get to the top of it, that's obviously not serving us well, especially in times that our economy is fluctuating so radically. So we're introducing things to the agency. And again, none of these happens because we say them on this town hall. It takes leaders who are willing to engage and go down the road of negotiating these. But one would be taking CIC qualifications. We know we're pouring more time to CIC than ever before. So let's use that to our strength and say that that should move us 2 years of raises in the band. So right off the bat, you now start going through the band faster, and then you earn 10% on top of that. The other thing is we have to increase our longevity raise. The 1.6 has served us well. However, it's time to continuing negotiating above and beyond that. That would be another thing that we propose. We also want to talk about a controller incentive pay for all on top of where we currently exist and lie, which moves, again, everybody up. A one-time hit saying that controllers are, serving in this duty and capacity, and it helps us it serves us in this regard, and we should all be compensated because of that. The last thing that I'll mention is we have to also see about premiums and differentials, and I'll give you one or two, and I'm sure Jamal will fill in some others from there, is looking at longevity bonuses. So let's say we propose 2.5 and end up, at a 2.0 June raise. Then we should start looking at, because we have our higher level facilities, or even the facilities, doesn't matter what your level is, that you're stuck in, can't get out of, we need to start ensuring that that experience time you have at that facility, a single facility, is compensated for. And that's, your experience, the training that you do, the procedures that you're likely helping develop or train somebody else on is at marks of 5, 10. So if I've been in one facility for 5 years, there's a payout to me. And then if at a 10-year mark, there's a payout to me that's at a higher rate at a 15, 20, and 25 years. So that way we have members not only having, we have members that have options, like, am I willing to move, or do I want to move from this 10 to 11, or I'm about to be here for 15 years and I'm going to get a $50,000 payout on this. Again, I don't know that's what the exact number to be. We would negotiate it, but those are the types of things that we need to introduce on top of other premiums and differentials if you want to hit any of them, Jamal.
Well, I would say to JFK4, it's very important to identify that your question was specific because of the federal pay cap, likely, right? So we have to be honest that there is a federal pay cap. we would join any legislation that talks about abolishing the federal pay cap. We would lend ourselves to that. But in the interim, there are things that, as Nick just said, premiums and differentials that aren't affected by the federal pay cap. So looking at a controller incentive overall, looking at maybe Saturday premiums, things like that, to put money in the pockets so that we can overcome the effects of the changes of the economy without needing to tackle the federal pay cap or using that as an excuse for why we can't put more money in the pockets of people. And oh, by the way, this can happen before 2026. We shouldn't be, and we don't have to wait for full term negotiations in order to address the needs of our membership. We are only bound by our own imagination and our willingness to do work. That's what Nick and I are about. That's what NAC has been about throughout the majority of my career, and we need to get back to that. Waiting simply for full term or term negotiations, as they're more accurately described, is failing our membership. So that's some of the ways we could get money into your pockets potentially in the short term. And then a lot of what Nick said was about the long term. So having a pronged approach to it is what's going to serve our membership properly.
The only other one that I'll add is talking about overtime. We would also engage in any mechanism or method to start looking at legislation if it's going to require that, or if we can somehow, place it in the realm of negotiation. But likely this would change the retirement. Is if your highest 3 years, well, we're at right now shackled to facilities and not able to leave because many of us are on 6-day work weeks, or many of you are on 6-day work weeks, working 60 hours, a week, 120 hours in a pay period, which is something that we're going to continue facing. Staffing's not fixed yet. We have to ensure if your pay is met at its highest level next year, that it could be looked at as part of your high 3 overall. But again, that's not us just being able to say empty promises or fancy words. We would have to engage legislatively to look at incorporating that into the retirement process. But because we are, in a unique scenario right now, we are the ones that are going to save the aviation industry from collapse by continuing to help work the way out of this staffing crisis.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the question, JFK4. Now we're going to go over to Christina. Go ahead and unmute. And there she is.
Hi, guys. Good to see you guys. So I don't think I've heard this on any of the other town halls, but management likes to tell us that we're going to lose sectors if we don't open them. But we live below 80% staffing always. So nobody really wants to open sectors, and we'd rather just work extremely busy, even though you shouldn't, for a shorter amount of time than to, get your teeth kicked in for 40 minutes versus 2 hours sitting there doing regular. But if we had the staffing, we would open the sectors. Is it true with the CRWG numbers and with what's going on in the agency? Are we going to start losing sectors because we're not opening them? And what is the plan to get data counted as a sector? Because data is always sitting there as sorry, I'm at SoCal Tracon, if anybody doesn't know that. Data is always our handoff, in waiting. So instead of opening a handoff on one of the 5 sectors, we have data staff so that if this sector blows up or that sector blows up, we have somebody there. But data doesn't count towards our staffing number. And so I don't really have a fully formed question, I'm sorry, but just they keep telling us we're going to lose sectors if we don't open them. But I don't want to sit there for 2 hours either. So I don't know. Go ahead.
Jamal, you want me to start on the first part of that?
Sure.
Okay. So with the CRWG and Christina, just to dive directly into it, there's nothing that we've seen where the agency's saying they're going to take away sectors or anything like that. What it's incumbent upon is leaders such as Jamal and myself to have the experience and the expertise of knowing the information that's actually out there. What it'll impact is staffing, Christina. And one of the things that I was able to do on the CRWG team, and that wasn't just me alone, there was, Dean Acapella, Eugene Friedman, and Mick Devine were there. But one of the things that we took and ensured was that we looked at the comparison of overtime used and to your facility, what they said they need. We had asked the reps and the ATMs to take a prospective look at what they would need, regardless of their staffing today and what positions they'd open. We then took 2 years of data in the past 19 and 22 when we did that CRWG to see, had this position ever been opened? And if it hadn't, what's your rate of overtime over those 2 years as well? Because you're likely, there's different thresholds that you can kind of see that, define themselves of, like it's very likely that this facility would never have opened that position. And as staffing increases, you continue to either demonstrate that or not demonstrate that. And what that leads to is needing to ensure that the CRWG numbers have a continuous review of what's going on. Is not only just looking at the agency wanted to just look at time on position. We obviously walk back from that because you can't have time on position. It's something that you can never staff. We've shut down handoffs and en route centers, cab coordinators at towers, and like you said, quite often splitting finals or sectors in our large TRACONs. Overall, we shouldn't be held victim to that, and we must continue ensuring that we tell our story, not just every 10 years, but about every 18 to 24 months. So that way these things aren't lost in translation overall. And Jamal and I are well versed in that. We've made all of the projects that we've worked on, we rely on data to be our source, because just saying words out loud, you could think you can have the greatest argument ever until the agency holds up a different set of data that ultimately overcomes the few things that you said. So we continue to rely on that, but no, we won't be losing sectors because of it. We need to ensure that we keep moving it forward like we did when we met as a team with the CRWG.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Christina. Okay. So I see some names on here that I know of people who are not shy. So please don't hesitate to throw up your hands, throw it in the chat. A lot of RT1 names here. It's nice to see everybody.
Well, Aaron, while they wait on a question, just want to be, and Nick opened up with it, just very specific about something that we see as we do travel the country, is there is a misperception and intentional jading of the truth regarding our desire as a team. And again, our team, while it says NDJH, is much more than us. We have the support of several of the RVPs, lots of members across the country, and we have a team that helps inform all of our decisions. The notion that we do not want to open the collective bargaining agreement and negotiate pay is one that's completely false. It's a narrative that serves, I guess, others that are running for the position that don't think maybe that they have enough merits to stand on, so they want to make that very divisive point. Our membership deserves and actually has a right to know all that faces them when we make these choices as to whether or not and how we go about increasing compensation. What do we expose ourselves to? Our executive orders in place. All of those things are part of the conversation. So I'm saying that to hopefully stimulate some questions. We'd rather it come up organically and you all ask us questions. If not, we will. But if you have questions about our desire to open the CBA, if you have questions about how the executive orders play into any determination we should be making, please ask them so we can get it out on the table. We don't want to do an infomercial. We don't want this to be scripted. We want to actually have conversation with members, because oftentimes we can learn things. We learned yesterday from a member that the only thing that, and Nick knew I was going to say this, that'll work for him is a 100% raise. If we don't get a 100% raise, then we failed him, and he's at a level 11. So we had to tell that member that that's highly unlikely. But as Nick described to him, it's interesting how compounding works. In 10 years, Nick's gotten about 100% raise. So the time does work. Our contract does move pay for us, but we recognize that the economy has set us back. Our spending power is not where it was, and we do have to make an adjustment to get us back on track. So by no means do we have a desire to sit status quo. I don't understand why anyone would actually believe that, but want to make sure that it's clear and understood that we do not.
Yeah, thanks, Jamal. Still waiting on some hands, still waiting on some questions in the chat. I know we've done almost all of the regions themselves except Region X, which is on Wednesday, and maybe a lot of the folks who are here already had attended their town hall from their regions, but I guess while I'm, oh, here we go. Christina's got a question. We'll go back to Christina.
All right, I'll hit you from my other angle. So obviously it is my great pleasure to always be looking out for families and childcare. What changes do you think we could make as a NATCA family to make our union events more family friendly and to help people feel comfortable bringing their children and their spouses with them? Because a lot of stuff that we do is on our own annual leave, which is limited. And if you can couple that with a family vacation, sometimes that's a little easier to get people to spend their leave on. Do you see any, what do you see as a way forward to make the union activities more family friendly?
Well, I'll start with one of the areas that we could do is making sure that we have, representatives, and I'd say like yourself, right? Somebody who is engaged as an Article 114 in this type of endeavor on the regular, is looking at our major events, CFS, NACA, Washington, the convention, ATX. Are we looking at those angles? Are we bringing that in? We need to vet that process through several different groups, committees, and share the information overall. Right now, what I see is that every group has to ultimately just get, what appears to be the blessing of Rich, and then Rich will change that at the last minute overall. And that's a very one-sided look. So say we included the NEB, with a briefing about the topic, but that's 12 persons and 12 eyes, aren't it? Now, when we go out and we can say, okay, we're going to have a discussion of this is what it looks like and who all do we need to involve in it, I think that group should expand. While the NEB may have, an ultimate say because they have the fiduciary responsibility of executing the budget, we should also ensure that we're maximizing the voice of the ideas that are out there. Well, I think that we've made as a union. I don't want to disparage the efforts that have been made in our committees that are out there looking at it. I think we're making a more concerted effort, but it's something that we have to bring through the forefront and put on as a continuous checklist in the future, not just who we have on that group overall, because that's not fair to them. We should be able to say, hey, here's a think tank, here's some examples, here's some ideas, and you all take and move those forward from there. What are we doing about childcare? Are we going to provide this? That just helps a group make better decisions overall. Jamal, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, brother.
Yeah, I think it's part of it is also being mindful of the calendar. We did the convention in Fort Lauderdale. I think it was Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. It all feels the same down there. Yeah, we did the convention in Fort Lauderdale, and it was great seeing so many families. And it was because it was in the summertime and families were able to join. And not only great so that those families could be together, but so that we're spawning other people that understand what it is to be in a union. When you spend so much time away from your family, it's nice for them to have the opportunity to see what you do, see how the union's funds are spent, see how important it is to have that solidarity and grow unionism, not only for ourselves, but for those families out there. So being mindful of the calendar, I believe that the San Francisco convention is over Mother's Day. I guess in some ways that's good, and in other ways you're taking people away during Mother's Day. And I could be mistaken. That was my recollection. But being super intentional and when we set those dates, while balancing that against the fact that we do have to come up with contracts with hotels, et cetera, but make that part of the pitch at the convention that we're keeping families in mind. And I think as we transition in that direction, it'll just become part of our lexicon. So thanks for the question, Christine.
Thank you guys for all that you do and all your.
Thanks, Christina. We've got a few questions that have popped up in the chat now, and some of them are long, so I got to go glasses on this one. Gary writes, a large percentage of our members didn't see the White Book. What advice do you have to help spread the message of the history of battling presidents. Also, this is the most divided that I've seen the union since being hired in '07. What is the plan to help heal and bring people back together after the election?
Yeah, I'll start at the beginning, and Nick, you could take the healing part, or would you like the vice versa? That what do you want to do?
That works perfect, brother. What you
Okay. Yeah. So as far as the history has to be taught, be it positive, negative. History is, the way you avoid history, repeating history, is to understand, learn from it, and be adaptive. We do have a history in this country that's pretty clear, and this is not a political discussion regarding what political affiliation you have, but just align with what's happened to labor when we've had particular parties in the White House. We've had since the '80s, I believe, four Republican presidents, and three of the four have either imposed work rules, fired us, or put in crippling executive orders. That doesn't mean we don't operate as a union during that time, but we have to be mindful of that. We have to be mindful that our legislative wins associated with transitioning out of the white book into the red book were in large part due to our legislative relationship that we formed with a junior senator from Illinois and Barack Obama, and that it's a multi-pronged approach to address any issue that we have, legislative being a growingly important part of that. So we have to be mindful of that and educate our members on it. We can't be afraid, and most importantly, like Nick said, it should be universal. We have 10 regions. They should all be hearing the same message. There should be absolutely no division in the truth. The truth is what it is, and we need to educate our members and then educate our members on what our plan of attack is based on that very truth. It's not cowering. It's not being afraid. It's being honest, truthful, and moving the ball forward and playing the game of strategy based on what we're facing. So, Gary, I think the right thing to do is to have a cohesive message from the top, ensure that the RVPs understand that, then the ARVPs, FAC reps, and then also use some time that we do get some time from the agency to deliver some of these messages on duty time, so long as they're not Hatch Act violations, and just ensure that our members have clarity as to what we're doing. Because when our members are clear, they're decisive, and they force us to make good decisions. When we intentionally try to put misinformation in front of them, we're hurting ourselves in the long run. So we have to put a stop to that.
Yeah, the other aspect of that is the White Book is something that we're going to quickly look at and say, and that had how many articles in it? Because I believe it had like 108 articles of a contract. What it was, well, 108 articles of a imposed work rule. One of the things about that is we are facing a time and period right now where executive orders, if we decided to open a contract, it's strip away overnight 77 contract articles and us go down to now bargaining from a position of 50 or less articles in totality. That is something that we have to not only know what the past looked like, but what the future is as well, as Jamal spoke about. But I want to get to the areas that you just discussed of uniting. When we get to and talk about uniting, that's going to come through action and through leadership. You can look at the two campaigns, right? We've had to call sometimes when the baby's ugly and the truth. That has to happen during the campaign process. But our point, our intent during the entire time is not to disparage our union or suddenly be in these positions. Right? I've been an RVP for 2.5 years. You got a president who's been the president for 2.5, but an RVP before that, and Mick, who's been an RVP for 2 terms, to suddenly have all of these problems with the union, and it's everyone else's fault except their own. Look, think about who's trying to divide, right? And who's trying to unite. Jamal and I are standing up against something that we are saying we don't believe in the direction that Rich and Mick are trying to take this union. We don't believe that they possess the leadership skills to move us forward. Those are different thoughts of opinion. But what we're not here doing is doing like Rich said to Joel Ortiz, where he said, if Jamal loses the campaign or loses the election because he was willing to run with Nick, I'll make sure Jamal's removed as the training rep. Those are real things. Those are real threats. And when you have threats like that out there, they must be addressed, and leaders must stand up and say, that is not okay. That is not who we're about. Jamal and I have zero desire to lop off any heads after this. We've had people who support Mick and Rich attend our functions and events. We hang out with them the same, have conversations, hug our NACA brother or sister, and move on about the day, because their difference of their opinion doesn't cast them in a light where they're no longer part of this union, and this shouldn't be. And currently is. It's starting to become about loyalty over competency. If you're in the inner group with Rich, well, then you may get some kind of shout out, some kind of benefit. You may get an MOU. You may get something to help you. But if you're not, and you're at a different facility that's maybe just under the one that's larger, being able to yell the loudest, you're going to be, or you happen to support somebody else, they're not coming to your facility. Jamal and I have been to all the facilities regardless, and we will continue to. So it's about your actions and not about just saying fancy words out to the membership. You have to go and show that we have no intent to remove anyone because of loyalty, that elections are healthy, and that in 3 years from now, if people aren't scared to go out and support somebody, like, hey, right now, Jamal and I here on the regular, man, I really do support you guys, but I don't want, to be cast out of a position or for consideration of other things. That's telling you, that's absolutely clear that our union isn't going in the right direction and leadership needs to change.
Yeah, I would only add to that, Gary. I mean, there's been things that are very clear that need to change. From my position currently as the national training rep, traditionally, the national training rep and the national safety chair go to all regional meetings. You certainly attend things like large TRACON FAC rep groups, Core 30 FAC rep groups. And since we've declared, or I declared that I wanted to be the executive vice president, not invited to regional meetings for the Great Lakes, Eastern region, New England, or Central regions. Sometimes the national safety rep is still invited, but me as the training rep, I have not. You've been around for training briefings that I provide. At no point do I make them about politics, because training is universal and about our membership. When we do things like that in an attempt to hurt, I think they think me, they actually hurt our membership. That's not good. Our members deserve the best. They deserve to hear from people that have been appointed in positions that have knowledge that can pass down to potentially alter the course of a career based on how that knowledge gets passed. So those type things we won't stand for, regardless of whom are in those positions and if they support us or not, because the information is not proprietary and should absolutely be in the hands of the members. So that's how we cannot be divisive, is do so by how providing the example and making sure that people know, there is no retribution or retaliation for not supporting us, because that's the person's choice and they're right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Gary. Okay, now we're going to go over to Shane from O'Hare in the chat. He says, we passed FAA reauthorization to get max hiring and CRWG numbers. You said earlier you want to rework INCEPT. What is the next step to work towards a solution to the staffing problem? And how will you make that happen during your time as president and EVP?
I'll start there, because I think what a lot of it is tying all the movement together, as we said, but also to address training more specifically. So max hiring, let's talk about what that looks like. The truth of the matter is, while that's a great buzzword, this goes back to really not understanding the history of the FAA and NACA to some extent. Max hiring is a term that the agency says, which is their maximum throughput. Well, it's interesting because the agency maxed hired in 2016, 17, 18, and were on their way in 19, right? Until COVID shut down the academy. So we've had max hiring previously, and it really doesn't do what it's designed to do, because you have to have max hiring to a specific place. Max hiring until we reach the CRWG numbers is what we need. Max hiring until we're no longer in a staffing crisis is what we need. That's not how it's identified right now. It's max hiring for 5 years, which is still a good thing, but knowledge is power. Our members deserve to know exactly what that looks like. But Again, when we hire 2,000 people, it turns into about 630 in each specialty by the time you go through the attrition rate at the academy for en route and the academy for terminal. You're losing a little over 30% in both of those. And then when you get to the field, you're losing another between 17 and 20%, depending on if they're terminal and en route. So we got to find ways to be more efficient in our training, be more diligent. One of the things we did in terminal, and that's also in the FAA reauthorization, is have a requirement to have simulators in all our buildings within 4 years. By doing so, we cut down training times, we increase aptitude, and we send people on faster to where they can help fill the higher level facilities. In the en route world, we have to look at ways also to utilize our simulators to overcome things like waiting for thunderstorm season and stuff like that, so we can move people into certification faster. Again, being very clear that at no point are we advocating for lowering the bar. In fact, quite the opposite. We believe that a healthier investment in our simulators raises the bar. But long way to say, the people we have is all we're getting. Increasing that certification rate is the best way that we can increase our staffing levels, so that then we can have people move where they want to be and actively participate in the INSEP. But that's not all. Nick knows more about it, and will be able to answer it a little bit differently.
Yeah, Shane, I appreciate the question, because you see in how many different parts of this all have to be tied together, and the level of expertise that's needed. You can't just know one line and then walk in. This comes from going out and meeting with thousands of members and listening to them, not just because Jamal and I figured out the secret sauce and here we are today. Because even the maneuvers that we're talking about now are just, again, stepping into a different area that needs to continue to evolve. So let's go with a three-pronged approach on INSEPT itself. One, you have to start working on targeted moves behind, again, we mentioned it earlier, the 4 through 7s that want to go to 9s and belows. Leave your competition for the 10s, 11s, and 12s. We'll work on that, and discuss that here in a moment. But when you have persons that we can backfill behind the academy, and then when they reach a level of certification, saying the person they were there to replace gets released to a level 9 or below, that begins just immediately stripping away some of the moves that are needed in INSEPT that were never going to happen anyways until that facility rose high enough on the list. So let's target them. Now, as people choose and pick facilities and continue to certify, and we increase the system, we also have a problem where they go from the 4 through 7s and flow around the 8s and 9s and just go to 10s or 11s and 12s. We have to do a very specific round for just an 8 and 9 and advertise it in advance. It doesn't need to be told to you just a month out, saying this panel will be for 8s and 9s, and we need to work with the agency to come up with a metric in them to what we want to call retention and throughput. Let's staff to a level of where this is how many bodies we need to retain, and this is how many bodies we need to continue throughput through the facility for 9s and belows to move to your 10s, 11s, and 12s. And this needs to also apply to the 10s and 11s. And that's a fancy way of saying staff the facilities at 125%, but we know that the agency isn't going to just be able to sign off on, oh yeah, okay, let's staff everybody 125%. We need to talk about working towards the number of 14,335. That's ultimately the number of CPCs that the CRWG that we were on, we collaboratively determined with the ATO would be staffed. With CIC coverage as well, be 14,663. We're nowhere near that number. So finding ways to do the retention and throughput where we don't just release somebody, put people in 6-day work weeks, and immediately make them dig back out for 9 months after training somebody for a year and a half. That is something that fundamentally the air traffic controllers everywhere are saying that doesn't work. We need to continue to evolve the system. The second one is bring back swaps. Let's bring back swaps, at least starting with light type facilities. And, just like we're making maneuvers on, trying to place people out of the academy at different facilities, let's make a maneuver for our BUEs that currently exist of saying, let's see light type facilities where we know the certification time doesn't take very long. Let's take 2 en route facilities just as an easy example. You move the person out of higher especially in the facilities that have larger numbers of bodies. You move them out of the higher staff facility first because they're likely only about 0.3 to 0.5% of staffing. Move them to the lower staff facility once they get to a certain level of certification. Let's call it 2R sides. Then they can, the other person can be released in 6 months to go to the other facility. Those types of ideas came from the members to us. But the other thing that's out there that we're not discussing is deviations and the abysmal rate of deviations that have destroyed many of the facilities that are on this call. That happens when you don't have a president that has a plan or approach and just says, RVPs go out and make a good data-based argument. That happened when I first got onto this NEB. 2.5 years ago, we were starting to talk about, or about 2 years in, sorry, let me try that again. About 2 years ago, so 6 months in, we, asked questions about deviations. They were egregious. Now they'll say they slowed down. Rich will say they slowed down or that we've helped put a pause on many of them. That isn't the case. This is the agency selecting from a facility that we can't even release from to move somebody, yet the agency is going to go in and make a management selection out of there. And when you say make a good data-based argument, that sounds great. Where's the data? Because this has been happening for over 7 years, right? The time that the NEBs, previous NEBs have been together. And oh, lo and behold, it was words and no actions. It was say make a good data-based argument, but the union didn't have an entire collection of all of these deviations that are occurring. We weren't paying attention to them. We're not tracking them. That is a union that's falling behind in the world of data to make an argument. So what did the Southwest region do? We decided to put a team together. We FOIA'd the agency. We did a Freedom of Information Act request, got all the names of every deviation that's ever occurred. We've been compiling those, working those. We've given them now to Andrew Lubovich, who helps work on a lot of the deviations that come through. But we also, as Jamal said, need to marry up all these systems. That's another one that has to be discussed with the agency as well. While it's their right to be able to select managers, we need to make a system where we're not grabbing on deviations, and then we're also doing, just management selections in general, and then grabbing, members through INSEPT and taking a facility that has worked their ass off to get out of a staffing shortage and immediately plummeting them right back into it. Until we start addressing those things in totality, we'll continue to just frustrate our membership, and the words of train your way out of it are a bleak reminder of our current situation.
Thanks, Shane. Let's break up the chat for a minute. We'll go over to Brad, who's got his hand up. Go ahead, Brad.
Guys, Nick and Jamal, great to see you guys at SoCal TRACON when you came out to visit a few months ago. It goes a long way with the membership. I wanted to ask, obviously, I know a lot of you on this call that I've worked with in the past, but for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Brad Wilco. I work at SoCal TRACON. I'm also our NACA. I'm on the NSC with Aaron as our pilot control liaison. One of the biggest questions I get asked recently is, we have a lot of disconnect right now with the workforce. Obviously, I had the privilege of being a commercial pilot before I came into this role as a controller, which I love dearly. But what we're starting to see is a lot of events making the news and a lot of safety reports coming in. And there just seems to be a disconnect now on their relationship and the understanding of, from our jobs anyway, as controllers, is what's actually going on the flight decks with pilots. And I know the big question I always get from every rep I talk to, every pilot I talk to, is when is flight deck training coming back? Because they're starting to see the disconnect and the lack of understanding between the two roles, which is something I'm very passionate about. But this is probably geared more towards Jamal. But where are we at on flight deck training? Is there a plan to get that back soon? Because the airlines ask for it. All the unions that I work with for the airlines, ALPA, SWAPA, APA, it's always the hot question. It's the hot question with the reps that I talk to wanting to get their members into the flight deck as well to build that understanding. And to give props to Nick, I will tell you that your region, the Southwest region, has been, with the pilot controller outreach we've been doing, has been incredible. You are by far killing it in that region. And I'll give props to Holly Cron from Houston Center and Kevin Myers from Fort Worth Center. They've been busting their rear ends to get this done and at least do what they can do in the meantime before we get flight deck training back. And we've tried to come up with creative ways of Delta's been very good, and Southwest also, about getting controllers into their simulators, but obviously there's a budget aspect to that. that the FA does not fund. And, either the RVPs or the FAC reps or whoever else has to fund that to get them in there. It's very educational. It's great because the controllers come back and they go into their areas, as we all do. And, hey, I learned this. But I guess my question, again, probably geared more towards Jamal than Nick, but where are we at on flight deck training? Is that coming back soon? Are we going to be less restrictive, or where are we at on that whole process?
Yeah. So thanks, Brad. We hear the same questions, particularly being the training rep and interfacing with airlines at places like CFS, where they're saying we're ready for flight deck training. Where are you all? So a little bit of the history of that is there is a security system, FDTAS, that was compromised due to, it started with the Shields Up process. Long way of saying it was related to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And we had to, as an agency, change our security interface with outside entities. So the interface with the systems that collected the data for flight deck training had to come offline. That has since been fixed. And you mentioned Kevin Meyer. He's very persistent. He asks every so often, "Hey Jamal, where are we with flight deck training?" And if you go to any place you're with and Rich is around, he'll say that's his pet project. He's working on it himself. It's actually not the case. We have sent over an MOU to the agency, and it's with them, and recently had discussions about getting together with them to work on finalizing or coming up with some terms that we can all agree with. As most of you know, there's a flight deck training MOU that we have, but there's also a flight deck training order. If we can actually just implement a lot of the things that we want out of the MOU into the order, it would streamline the need or shorten the need for the MOU. One of the things that is paramount to us is that we recognize that we don't get much time off. So taking out the provision that doesn't allow you to use it with your in conjunction with your annual leave is something that we're working toward overcoming. Now, that doesn't mean we will, but we're definitely working toward that. I believe that the agency recognizes it in the way we craft the languages and in an effort to ensure that training is conducted. Well, when you're only giving people 1 day off or 4 days off a month, the opportunity to use flight deck training is limited. So you might as well allow it to be done in conjunction with their leave. If they go to the same airport multiple times, who cares? It's about flight deck training, as Brad just said, having that conversation, learning from the aspect and from the relation of in the cockpit, and then telling them what we're doing in our control rooms, be it en route, tower, or TRACON. So those are the things we're working toward. We do believe we'll get a product that eventually works. But like anything, when you're trying to change it, you're trying to improve benefits for the membership. It's not always a straight line. It takes a little bit of effort, and we're putting that effort in behind the scenes now.
Yeah, I'll say, Brad, thanks for the shout out to the Southwest region. You never forget the name Wendy Smith, who's out there in Albuquerque killing as well. But I started naming everybody. It would probably take us, a few hours because of the passion that goes around to ensuring that our career and our profession is, symbiotic with the pilots because of the nature of our relationship. So thank you, Brad, for the efforts of what you're doing to ensure that we continue to be involved in those discussions that lie ahead. The only other thing that I'll add with it is you'll never hear me say, I, the president, am going to personally negotiate flight deck training, as Jamal had mentioned. That's a president looking for applause. That's a president that wants people to, oh, thank God you're here. That's not what a union is or what a union is about. As president, our job collectively should be, this is what our union doing to move it forward, and we're going to put the best experts in the room to ensure that they deliver on the behalf of the membership. That's what it's about, ensuring they get the applause, not you.
Thanks, Brad. All right, let's hop back over to the chat. Caitlin says, speaking of families and time together, I know having the PPO was a huge win, but what about working towards agency support for part-time work? I'm sure it's very difficult to get them to even consider, given staffing and the fact that many of us are on 6-day work weeks. but something I think could be beneficial in overall employer retention if it's an option.
Could not agree more that this is something that has to be explored in the ever-changing climate and world that we work in. Well, no one wants to, well, I guess no one wants to say, yeah, let everybody go part-time, because we know that that would just hurt the overall staffing more. We can't sit here and be blind to it or just say we'll get to it eventually. We need to put a panel together to look at, is there even a possibility to begin it, to start it, to have a certain percentage of the facility that's allowed to do it, where we have in the RVA contracts things like job sharing. Can we start to parlay that with the agency and work towards ensuring not only our working mothers but also our working fathers that have chosen to either stay at home with the children, or that they know that they can cover portions of a work week, much rather find ways and solutions to retain them or to recruit them to this, instead of casting them out in the side. Maybe they don't count towards staffing. Maybe they're put in a different realm until we get to around 14,000 CPCs in the system, where it can become incorporated into the overall numbers. There's solutions out there. We absolutely want to engage the agency in them. And Jamal and I aren't going to sit here and say we have all the answers to it, but we know it's one of the things on the forefront for many of our working parents that are out there, because there's no time like now that's shown us the importance of coming out of COVID, than having that time outside of work, or the bonding time with our families that many of us had really never seen before or in the past. That is a true issue for our membership that needs to be addressed. So while I know that's not a specific answer with a specific solution to it, we aren't going to wait until saying the system has to be fully staffed before this happens for our working parents.
Well, there's another element to that, and that's to educate our members. We do have a part-time and job sharing Article 35, and part of it is, as we talked about, database discussions, is having our members formally make the request for those that have an interest in part-time, formally making the request. So Caitlin, I would encourage, make the request, and there's power in a denial, because that denial allows us to start building data to say there's elements of our CBA that we don't even get to because of how poorly we're staffed. You can't identify that there's something that you want to do and then never have the ability to do it because you haven't staffed well. We identify that families like to be together. We identify that for the pursuit of education, raising families, whatever it may be, that these are things that should be available, and then we don't have the staffing for it. So while it might seem minuscule, while it might seem exercising futility to apply for something that you likely know is going to be denied, it helps with the data, and it helps us to formulate the argument as we go forward, and be it CBA negotiations, MOU, or whatever it may be. So thanks for the question. I hope that information helps a little bit, and maybe you're the person that starts the wave of us having data to look back and say we've had 1,000 people apply and you've approved it for no one. That shows that there's an issue.
Thanks, Caitlin. For everyone following along in the chat, Brian Fox from Phoenix had posted a question that Nick and Jamal had covered earlier about division within the union with the election, and we messaged Brian privately to make sure that you had covered his what he wanted to know about, and he said he was fine. I just didn't want anybody thinking that we skipped over it in the chat. So we're gonna go back to Shane from O'Hare. He says, this is from a coworker who's on position and couldn't get on the call. If your plan is to avoid opening the contract by increasing pay via MOU, how does that affect retirement and controllers that are at or close to the cap?
So our plan is not to avoid opening the contract by using MOUs. Our plan is to use things that we've done in the history of this union and use MOUs to enhance our pay. We had it occur during the transition from the AT pay scale to the, GS to the AT pay scale. And we had it occur when we extended the slate book. When we extended the red book, we had that occur. We had an MOU that gave us the 1.6, the longevity increases, and codified regardless of position and band. So again, we don't have, that's not in lieu of, that's to operate in the present. And in the event that there's executive orders that would cripple the union. It's an avenue we could pursue. So I want to be very clear that we're not trying to avoid opening the CBA. So with that said, you have to include things in the MOUs that do address the fact that there are people toward the cap, and I think we discussed some of those before, and looking for ways to identify what's going on right then and there. Like you said, if we have a Saturday premium and that increases pay, if we have a controller incentive pay and that increases pay for all of our members, it's not going to be affected by the cap because those things don't go toward your retirement and are not calculated into your actual basic pay. So we have to, be creative, and we are mindful of the fact already that we have people near the cap or at the cap for that matter.
Yeah, just in case it needs to be said, because it sounds like it does over and over again, because obviously the narrative has been spun on anonymous forums, even from, Rich himself, who tried to set up a vote on the NEB to get somebody to say the word extend, because to him, Whitaker was pressing him for an answer that day or the next time they were going to talk. And 2 months later, here we are having the same discussions that we had in the past. 2026 will be here, best case scenario. We determined the contract needs to open, which we absolutely will, being no executive orders in place, and we have the ability to open the contract. What we have to do is then discuss what the opposite side of that coin looks like, and if there are executive orders in place, what are going to be our strategies to maneuver around it. Legislatively, we'll have to work to remove those executive orders. We'll have to ensure that we build relationships with that if it's Trump, since he was the one that put in the executive orders last time, work with his transition team and or this cabinet themselves and talk about why that's going to cripple us as a federal union. We must be out there having the attack on all fronts. We never hedge our bet in just one direction. We find out all the ways to maneuver and pick the best avenue to fight. And because any one of those can lodge free at any moment. And in the interim, as Jamal said, we don't have to wait till 2026. We can start negotiating now. The best way to get the temperature check of where the agency's at, where the White House is at, is go ahead and pass across one of these proposals for pay, or a more comprehensive and robust MOU that covers a multitude of topics. They don't always just have to be around one thing, and see what the agency responds with. What are they saying they can or can't do? What are they willing to do? Because that's really what's going to lead us where what negotiations will look like in 2026. So all of these are strategies that are out there, and we want every member to know that we are not going to find a way to avoid opening the contract. We're going to find every way to ensure you're compensated as quickly as possible for the jobs that are being done today.
Now, I would like to just add to that. I thank people like Shane and everyone else that is asking these questions for pushing all of us. When we first launched our campaign, we were launching to just give an overall thought of what our existence would be as leaders. And the members very resoundingly said, give us more. We don't want to hear buzzwords. So we've laid out, we have on our website, detailed visions for where we want to take the union. And there are no buzzwords. We're presenting to you things that we would offer to the agency to try to address our compensation. Make sure that we ask that you have that same expectation of others, that others aren't allowed to do 1 second or 30-second videos where they cut and paste images and mislead you. Hold them to the same standard, because standing up to this level of scrutiny is what makes us better. Others have town halls with very scripted answers and questions. I've never met Shane. I don't know him. He could have asked anything. It's awesome that he asked the question that he asked, but we're not hiding from that. So take all those things into account. When you're telling the truth, it's easy to face anyone. When your truth doesn't change, and there are times where our position is going to have to change as knowledge and information comes forward, but we'll be very clear on that as well. We're not chasing our tail, and we're not trying to tell you what you want to hear. We're trying to be very forthcoming with the membership, because that's what you deserve.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Shane, for the question. On the heels of what Jamal just said, a couple things in the chat. Christy just posted in there our website address, as Jamal alluded to. You can go there should learn all about who Nick and Jamal are as candidates, what they stand for. And not just for yourself. I think you should show others at your facility who desperately need information to be educated when that ballot shows up at their house. Send them to our website. We have our social media there as well for people to follow along and stay up to date on things. It's not just about likes and posts and reposts. We got to be educated. The election is too important to get it wrong. Also, Christy has posted in the chat a couple of times a link to a volunteer form. As I said at the start, ballots will go out in a week from today. And it's important that we actively make sure the people at our facilities, their addresses are up to date, that we encourage them to vote. This is the best time as a NACA member. And I hear lots of different narratives out there about, oh, we never have a say, or, how come everyone else is making all the decisions? This is your say right here. This is our say. The best time to use our voice is in these elections. Let's not let people be silent. Use your voice, encourage others to vote. You can click on that form if you want to step up and just help get out the vote. That people, encourage people to participate. Click on the form, you put in your name, contact information, someone from the campaign will reach out to you. So those are the two forms there. We have the website and the social media, along with the volunteer form there in the chat for anyone. I tap danced there for a while, hoping to see any more hands go up or any more questions in the chat. I know we're at about 80 minutes or so. I'm not seeing any, so we'll call for a last call there. And while that's going on, I'll turn it back over to Nick and Jamal for any closing thoughts.
I'll extend a little bit of this closing because there's a topic that I want to make sure that is touched for this group. You may have heard in the past. One of the things that we know that we have as an organization that we must tackle is also mental health. Jamal and I have shared different aspects of our life, the impacts that our lives have had on us, this campaign has had on us. My mom died of suicide when I was 10 years old. My father had mental health problems when my stepmother passed, right at the very beginning of COVID in 2020. These are things that we cannot sit around and just hope for awareness or that we talk about them. Hell, they're talked about them on the rare occasion or a GoFundMe when it goes out, and that's not appropriate. We have to start getting into the world of preventive, not just awareness. And Jamal and I, while we know it doesn't solve it, it doesn't fix it all, would immediately engage with the agency to start working on an optional 1 hour a pay period where our members could utilize services of counseling or EAP, where they can schedule that in advance and we'd be paid on duty time to start with that. And maybe that helps one member the first year or 100 members eventually overall. That's one more person that we as a union are finding creative ways to ensure the realities of today are to be addressed. And not just for NACA members. We must change this for the labor movement. This doesn't just impact us, but who better than the air traffic controllers to stand up for all the workers and say, this has to be recognized and employers need to start taking action, not just saying words of kindness when we've had tragedy result because of something. So I wanted to make sure that was covered before we close out. Jamal, I'll come back to closing out. I wanted to give you a moment on this topic as well before we go from there.
Yeah, I would say to me that mental health is something that's important, and it's important that those in leadership positions make comfortable for others to address. Vulnerability is something that is often looked at as weakness, but being vulnerable and identifying when there's a problem is something that can save lives, and we need to be able to display that as well. I'm an extremely confident person. I believe in myself, and I believe in NACA. I will tell you that this campaign has created vulnerabilities for me, and has sometimes affected my own mental health. When you see people question your ability to read or do basic math, things like that don't feel good, obviously. So it gives me an opportunity to see how others might be feeling. Moving from Las Vegas to Washington, D.C. and dealing with seasonal disorders, and identifying those things and having to use EAP for the first time in my life back in 2020 was something that I never expected to have to do. I did it, and I'm better for it. Encouraging our members to be willing to do those things and let them know that there's nothing wrong. It's likely that all of us, no matter how strong we are, will deal with that at some point in our life. So be part of the change. Be part of making sure that people understand that it's not a scarlet letter to say that maybe you aren't feeling as great, and get it addressed so we can go from awareness to prevention.
Yeah, we have things like an SSRI program that are out there, but it's costing our members at tens of thousands of dollars a clip. Something that we have to address as well. The agency knows that they need us. We need to ensure that they realize the impact and effect that this is having on us when we're seeking help. The regional flight surgeons need some level of oversight. They cannot be just the haver of your career or not. They cannot be just, well, we want to pull this person's medical, or we'll make this person wait for 8 months. That's something we have AOV to oversight us. Let's put somebody in to have oversight on them. That's something else that we'll push for as well. But to go into a closing, we know you've taken your time on a holiday to be here with us. You're coming, with your ideas, your solutions, your questions, and wanting to see what lies ahead in this future for this union. Jamal and I are here because we know you deserve a choice in this election. And it's clearly two different paths. Making rich, or in a world of half-truths, lies, deceit, misinformation, just go look at an anonymous forum. Their campaigns lead those forums. They're the ones out there trying to vie for a seat. Jamal and I are wanting to vie for you to have a voice again. So our members and our leaders that are out there do not feel like they somehow must kiss a ring, or that we have to serve a king. It's about your voice in this union. It's about leaders being engaged, being in your facilities, putting RVPs, and ensuring that they're not bogged down with ancillary duties coming out of COVID. We have a time that we need to be more unified than ever. But unity isn't also capitulation to somebody you don't believe in. Do not believe Rich is leading us in the right direction. Do not believe Mick possesses the skills to negotiate on behalf of this union. Do not believe he possesses the skills to lead this in the entirety of this union. Those things must be called. I would rather stay as the regional vice president of the Southwest region, but I'm not going to sit here and watch somebody say they'll rip somebody's personal life apart if they are to run for a position, because that means they'll be willing to do it to you too when it comes time, or if you don't agree with them. We don't need to be a union of just yes persons. We need to be a union that has great discourse, that has different ideas, and that it can be trusted to know to have our internal discussions of how to make us better, and that your leaders are going to listen to them. They're not going to shrug you off, and they're not going to scoff at a moment to come and spend time with you. I'm not going to have to hear Rich say, how fast can I get out of this event so I can just leave and go get a slice of pizza? That's being derelict in your position. Let's get back to wanting to be with the membership and move us forward together. So with that, now it's on you. It's your job to take this, decide what direction we're going. Ballots go out on June 3rd. It's going to be your voice and you influencing others of who to vote for that will really change it. Don't just leave it to Jamal and I, because that's not what is on the table. It's going to be all of us saying collectively, we must turn out at our highest rate, and we must make our voice loud and clear.
Well, I'll be much shorter on this day of remembrance. Please remember what it's about. People have given service for our country. We're all in service to our country in a much different way. I'm proud to be part of NACA, and happy to have you all as my NACA family. We hope that you continue to promote this election through all means, and we appreciate your time. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.